I have not had the pleasure in the past of meeting here in the studio, but I know you're no stranger to this. You've been on before. You've been active in the political world for quite some time. Let's see, last ran for Ag Commissioner, right?
Yes.
What was that year?
In 2019.
19, okay.
You and I shared the stage at Jacinto.
That's right.
That day.
That's right. We sure did. I remember. What an event. That's just pure Mississippi there, isn't it, Ricky?
One of the first pieces of advice I give any candidate who's running statewide in Mississippi is that Jacinto is just as important as the Neshoba Fair.
Yeah. Now, I know you have an incredible grasp on political history in Mississippi and just the history of Mississippi in general and our geography, our diverse culture. There's probably a lot of people out there listening, Ricky, that aren't even familiar with that event. But you're so right. It's the first time I've ever been, was in 2019. And I was thinking about running for office at the time, and they were gracious enough to allow me to speak. You get a short period of time, and it's kind of a throwback a bit. You've got a trailer that serves as the stage and a couple of speakers that project and a podium and a microphone. And I think Representative Nick Bain served as the MC. He normally does. He's from the area. His family has a storied history in that area. And it literally is kind of on the banks, the hills, and the grove of the trees. Beautiful setting with the old historic courthouse.
Yep, that's the way most political events went on when I was a boy around Mississippi. You'd get a flatbed trailer or a lowboy and put it up under the shade, and folks would show up,
Yeah. There was a number of people who spoke. You get a short period of time to say your piece. Of course, that was statewide election year, so you had, I think, all the statewide candidates. Maybe a couple were absent. But then you had lots of local candidates. And what I recall, I don't know if you remember this, Ricky, was how many were running for justice court positions? It seemed like there was 20 people running because you don't have to be a lawyer in Mississippi. A high school degree, I think, is the minimum requirement.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when you didn't have to have the high school degree. That was actually a reform.
Okay. Wow. So, but it was fascinating listening to there's just common people out there that are, in various walks of life that make the decision they want to be a justice court judge, and they, of course, address the crowd there in that setting. It was neat.
Before the justice court system was created, we had a system of justices of the peace.
I remember that,
In each supervisor's district, there was a justice of the peace. And many of the justices of the peace also owned a country store. And so you could go by the store and pick up a couple of pounds of bacon and pay your fine or pay on your fine or whatever you had to do without having to go all the way into town.
I want to say that's who collected traffic citations.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know State Senator Robin.
Sure, very well.
Her mother, Mary Joyce, who's still doing well, was a justice court judge in Jones County when I was a kid.
Okay. All right, so what have you been doing since you ran for office in 19?
I decided to have a real life. And my children were growing up and my parents were getting older, so I've been more of a family man over the last 5 or 6 years than I had in the preceding 15 or 20.
Okay.
I know you can relate to that.
Yes, sir.
Having been putting in those 22-hour days in the private sector.
Know it well.
But we have a little farm in southeast Jones County, and I've got a few head of cattle. And Mama's still there, 87 years old, still calling the shots. And my wife and children are in Jackson. I've got a daughter who's just finishing up her freshman year in college, and my son's about to go into the 10th grade. So I've been family focused for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying it.
Well, good for you. You look great, by the way.
Thank you.
Please, you didn't have to dress up for me. Now, during the session,
I woke up like
I'm in my suit. I bet you did. I know you're a sharp dresser.
It's either this or the overalls. That's all you get. It's one extreme or the other.
And you've got the blue Democrat tie on there as well. So
straight from Walmart.
I love it. And you also have a great sense of humor. So,
well, I'm not a serious enough person to take myself seriously. And I try not to take life too seriously because we're not going to be here that long anyway.
You're so right about that. I agree. So have you been involved in politics at all since then?
Yes. It's sort of like the line from Michael Corleone, every time I think I'm out, they drag me back in. I was sort of drafted to take the leadership role in the 4th Congressional District Democratic Executive Committee.
Okay.
During the COVID period, the chair at the time had passed away and there was no leadership. So in 2023, late 2023, the folks asked me to chair that committee, which is 1/4 of the state committee, 20 members. And I agreed to do it, and we got through a district and state convention last year, and I'm in the traces again until 2028. But
okay.
I'm always keeping an eye toward the exit.
So, future political aspirations?
None.
Okay.
None.
All right.
My time is past.
Nah.
I feel very strongly that in politics, like in theater, a person needs to know when to exit stage left. And I've got my eye on the exit because there are people younger and smarter with better character and more capable than I have ever been or ever could be, who could occupy any and all offices that I might run for.
Okay.
So I want to support Gen X and Gen Z and have the good grace that unfortunately some of our older politicians haven't had to get out of the way when I still know where the exit is.
So would you include the former president in that category? What do you think about that?
I was one of the people who believed that he should have stuck. You're talking about President Biden.
Yes.
I was one of the people who believed that he should have stuck to his commitment to seek that one term and one term only.
Okay.
Over the last few years, if you'll forgive a personal example, over the last few years since 2016, I saw my father decline, and it's painful to see. It's certainly painful up close, but it's painful to see at a distance too. And my grandfather, who lived to be 94, told me shortly after his 80th birthday. He said, he called us all boy. It wasn't because he couldn't remember our name. He was just keeping us in our place. Papa said, boy, you need to understand, after a man turns 80, he ought not to ever buy green bananas. And that's no reflection on elderly people, but I just think...
Great advice.
I think that there's Ecclesiastes tells us there's a time and a season to every purpose.
Okay.
And those of us who have fewer tomorrows than we do yesterdays should recognize that and work and groom and help and advise as well as possible the rising generation.
So you know this, Ricky. There are a lot of concerns among Republicans that, maybe the president wasn't really in charge, and we really want to know who was signing some of these orders and pardons and stuff. And so they scheduled a hearing, but the Democrats sort of turned their back on it and defied it. So what do you think about that? Should they show up and testify?
Well, first of all, given the bigness of our federal government, no president's ever in charge.
That's a good point.
No president. It's too big
Not
a
of
job.
everything, I agree.
It's too big a job for one mind.
Sure.
But I don't know what an investigation could prove. I suspect there are some less than pure motivations than just good government and openness.
It's politics, Ricky.
Yeah. But especially this notion about the pardons. I think the wrong question is being asked about pardons. I think we should ask the question in the 21st century, why do we still afford those sweeping powers of pardon to be used so capriciously?
I agree with you, Ricky.
I think that the pardon should be as rare as the 29th of February.
Not only do I agree with you, I believe that's what the framers had in mind when they conferred that power
I'm sure they did.
to the executive branch, to the executive, honestly. So we got a break right here. You can hang around with us, Cam.
Of course.
Yeah. We got Rickey Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party, in the element with Rickey Cole, former chairman of the Mississippi Democratic Party, also former candidate for Agricultural and Commerce Commissioner here in the state. So Rickey, you of course, like I said earlier, you've been a student of political history and all history related to Mississippi. I follow you on social media, and I'm always fascinated with your degree and depth of knowledge about our state. I mean, you're a person I consider just a quintessential Mississippian. You and I may not always agree on some policy matters, but I just want you to know I respect that.
Thank you.
And you're a respectful person. You're not a confrontational person. And I think you and I would agree we need more of that type of discourse in our politics. We can get a lot more done together when we have that. But, man, we seem to be so polarized at all levels of government. But you've witnessed in the state of Mississippi this transition from one that was under Democrat control forever. Mm-hmm. Now it's one that's under Republican control with supermajorities in both houses and, of course, all the statewide positions. Is there anything to which you'd attribute that, Rickey? And do you see any sort of major contrast in their philosophy and their approach to governing than the prior Democrat Party?
Well, to your first point, my love for Mississippi is total and complete.
I believe that's genuine.
This is my home. And if you want to make me mad, tell me I don't need to be here. This is my home. And my mother's family's been in Mississippi since before statehood, 1814. As regards to the current state of political discourse, I think that too many people in and around and who follow politics make three major mistakes in their discourse and debate with people who have different opinions. Number one, we practice this horrible little game of whataboutism. You know, if the highway patrol pulls you over on 55 and you're going 92 miles an hour, he's not going to fail to write you that ticket just because somebody else breezes by at 92 miles per hour. You can't say, well, don't write me a ticket, you didn't catch him. So that's a fallacy in the argument. The other problem we run into is the ad hominem attack. Don't get personal. We have to live together. This is all our Mississippi. Don't be personal, and don't go after people's personal lives or personal business or attack somebody because of some credential they may lack. Stick to the argument. And the third thing, and this is getting more and more and more prevalent, is this notion of owning somebody. The way to own somebody is to win the argument, win the debate on the ideas. Let's stick to ideas and not personality. Stick to the subject at hand and not be in such a hurry to dehumanize each other. We're not at war. There is no civil war in this country, and there ain't going to be one, and anybody who says so is a fool. And the reason for that is all of us are all too busy trying to make a living and survive. We hadn't got time to fight one another. We got to fight the bill collectors. So if we will simply follow the golden rule, you know, that's why it's written in red. It's a really important statement. And my great-grandmother taught it to us really simply. Treat folks the way you want to be treated. And this dehumanizing gamesmanship, and I have to say that a fish rots from the head. And there's a lot of vitriol that comes out of Washington, D.C. that is shameful, and from both sides. And we don't have to insult each other to get our point across. We were taught to disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that's the great thing that's been lost. Some of the best aspects of our old Mississippi culture have been thrown away. And some of the worst and lowest aspects of our old Mississippi culture has gone national. And I think that's shameful in both regards. I would have loved to have seen us preserve some of the decency and kindness and expand that decency and kindness to include everybody, rather than this rush to xenophobia and this rush to whataboutism and this rush to insulting people and attacking people mercilessly. And it makes for horrible public policy, if any public policy at all can come out of it.
it appears, Rickey, I think it's fair to say that the Democrat Party has leaned quite heavily into what is commonly referred to as identity politics, and they've adopted this deference to this gender ideology and stuff. Do you think that's the right strategy for the Democrats? Is this something you support as well?
Well, all of that's way above my pay grade. Because I believe that, as I was taught, that we ought to take people the way the Lord made them, and that's one at a time. And we are all created equal. The thing that makes America exceptional is not our wealth or our geography or even our people. The thing that makes America exceptional is those words that Jefferson wrote 249 years ago. All men are created equal and endowed with the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and other rights.
By their creator.
By their creator.
Not government.
Creator, capital C, creator.
That's right.
And it's a God-given birthright to all humanity, not just us in this country, but every human being all over the earth.
Yeah.
And I think when we forget that and move away from that, we're moving further away from the golden rule.
Okay.
And the golden rule is not golden only because it was the inspired word of God. The golden rule is a heck of a key to success. If you treat folks the way you want to be treated, you can be as rich as Gerard Gibert.
Well, I don't know about that.
Or as rich as I am in friends.
Well, I will tell you that was an ingrained principle and value in my company as well. And it told the story a million times. We treat people the way we would like to be treated in business, and that resonated pretty well with our customers, and we meant it, and we lived by that. But I was going to ask you this. If your pay grade were higher, what advice would you give the Democrat Party today?
I think we have to be who we are without prefix, suffix, or apology. And I think we also have to understand that if we are comfortable with every person in our coalition is not big enough to win. We shouldn't play the game of exclusion based on attitudes. If we're going to be a party that preaches inclusion, we have to be inclusive and understand that there is no single public policy that has to be the litmus test as a price of admission.
Okay.
Nor should any political party have a loyalty test to one person as a price of admission either.
What would you advise the Republican Party?
Just that. Be Republicans and be a us.
Okay.
And not a I.
Gotcha.
A one-man band is not very entertaining very long. Our political parties are grand, old entities.
Yeah.
My party's almost 200 years old now, or is 200 years old now. And these venerable old institutions were around before we got here, and they'll be around when we leave. And we're temporary stewards and custodians. But we have to understand that we have inherited a brand, just like Coke or Pepsi. And we have to protect our brand and expand our brand, and that's our job. We are not at war. The political parties are not at war, and we should never use the war metaphor. What we're fighting for is market share. And the best example is Coke and Pepsi. We're without any ads, we're both at about 40.
That's true.
And we're fighting for that little bit that's in the middle so we can have bragging rights and have control of the market and have the best end caps and the best display in the store and more room for my Coke or more room for your Pepsi. And that's really all that we're doing.
I love the metaphor.
And Democrats are not always right. Republicans are not always wrong. But by God, we are all always Americans. And we're all children of God, regardless of whether we ever sit under a steeple or not. And we ought to treat each other that way, every day, all day, not just at 11 o'clock on Sunday.
It seems like we've shifted away from the notion of public service. We've conferred too much power, too many spoils to public office, which attracts a lot of people, and why a lot of people won't give it up.
It's not just government. It's our society. I saw a sad story the other day, and I can't remember what town it was in, but there was a Lions Club that was closing out, and they were giving their last scholarships, and they were shutting down. And this was not in a tiny little place. This was in a mid-sized town somewhere in Mississippi. I can't remember the town. But I thought how tragic, because we Mississippians have, and we Americans, have become so less community-oriented and so atomized into our own little individual worlds that whatever we do, we look at it as a transaction and what's in it for me.
Makes sense.
And that's a cultural thing. I think government follows the culture. The culture doesn't follow the government.
Good point. Rickey, appreciate you coming, man.
Anytime, Gerard.
Yep, enjoyed the discussion.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
a lot. Rickey
Yes, sir.
Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party, has been our guest. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.